most of the time people show the desire. I want to do better. I want to do this. I want to learn that. Absolutely. That makes sense. I want to do that next time. I don't want to have this conflict next time. But if they are rooted in habitual behavior, then they're going to do it again.
The goal is to have as much collaboration as is feasibly possible, right? Whether it's one-to-one, group-based, leadership level, SRM to supported role to whatever, just maximize it.
Yeah.
Then what you've been working on, and I think it has been like the roadblock or the bumps along the road has been trying to come up with a solution that solves the limitations of that extensive amount of collaboration. But I don't know if you've necessarily defined out what all of the barriers to collaboration are first. So that's kind of what I was writing down as I was just, I mean, you were saying them. And,
I got a big one.
What is your big one?
Habitual behavior.
Yeah.
And that's actually where, for me, again, in the last several months, that's what I've been thinking about that exclusively, right? Because if we're looking at a systems problem, and actually I had mentioned Amy, she runs communications, for me, it kind of dawned on me, I'm like, all right, somewhere in this collaborative process, because if we look at, so again, let's get up to what we have right now is the creating accountability chart, which I know is changing because in my brain it has changed. But, right now, what you have is you get through reality, ownership, solutions, and plan. And from plan, you get to implementation. And implementation is the individual utilizes the resources to implement the plan. So, which you shouldn't have a word define itself. Doesn't matter. So when we look at implementation, it was a matter of like, okay, well, if implementation is successful, then you move to success. Cool. Well, why was it successful? Because I was more clear. Because I was more consistent, because I had more confidence, I had more competence. But the question is, all right, so if you fall again, and fall is that, again, maybe the plan didn't work, the solution wasn't appropriate for the problem, we thought we had an idea going into it, but it wasn't exactly what we should have been doing or whatever. So you come back to fall tolerance, and the idea with fall tolerance is you circle back by being like, cool, we're going to jump back to collaboration, we're going to try to figure this out again. More often than not, what we have is not a unwillingness to uphold policy and process. It's not an unwillingness to do so. We have a desire, where most people, generally speaking, have a desire to do good work. You have a desire to do excellent work. You have a desire to be the best in your field. You have a desire for all of these things that you mentioned. You get this return on investment. You have a desire for that. But often what happens is that we have habitual behavior that does not support that desire. So when we look at habitual behavior, it's then a matter of, well, how do you fix habitual behavior to then have a success, to not just have a desire to do so, but actually move that desire into success? And the question is, do you try to fight habit, or do you create new habits? And we talked about this before. It is very much, again, my opinion, I know it's a common opinion, is that for me, I have no intention of fighting bad behavior. I have every intention of training new behavior. And as we train new behavior, again, that's where we will see more successes. But with habitual behavior being one of those barriers, the question is, who is monitoring and how are we monitoring the training of new habitual behavior? And that's where, for me, when we say the lack of follow-up, when we say lack of follow-up, again, habitual behavior is the lack of follow-up. The individual is not going back to their supporting role member, or is that the lack of follow-up, the supporting role member is not going back to the individual. And we need to have two halves of the pie. It's what we talk about with mentorship. You need to have, a mentor can't do more work than a mentee, and a mentee can't do more work than a mentor. So it's who's going to make the first move, who's going to make the first engagement, who's going to end up doing that. But I would say those are your probably two biggest barriers, because most of the time people show the desire. I want to do better. I want to do this. I want to learn that. Absolutely, that makes sense. I want to do that next time. I don't want to have this conflict next time. But if they are rooted in habitual behavior, then they're going to do it again. And then you go back through the collaboration process, reality, ownership, solutions, plan. And what happens when you have a reality established, they own the problem, they see the solution, we have a plan, but then they just didn't do it. They just didn't do it. Well, I have the desire to, but I just didn't do it. Well, why? Well, I don't know. I want to, I just didn't. And it's like, then maybe we don't have a tool of collaboration to make sure the mentors and the mentees are collaborating appropriately to make sure that new habitual behavior is taught.
Thanks for checking out this clip from the PAWCast Veterinary Podcast. If you are interested in watching this full episode, you can go ahead and find that right here. And if you're ready to be the force of change in veterinary medicine, go ahead and click subscribe right here to learn more. Thanks.